So that father and son story, that the son he was estranged from his dad.
Yeah.
A young adult son.
Yeah, deep in addiction.
Yeah. Blown off, family faith.
Yep.
Yep.
He was done with all of it.
Yes.
And checked out. And for some reason, he was willing to go to a fire. And looking back, I think there was some draw of, wait, you mean I'm going to go in a shed with a group of guys and hang out, smoke cigars, and most of these guys aren't even Christians? I'll do that.
So he comes to the fire and his dad's there?
Right.
Oh, gosh.
It was the power of story in a masculine atmosphere, and this young man cracked open. And almost uncontrollably, he found himself sharing. And the night crescendos in this moment of reconciliation with father and son. And then a company of men, many of them don't even know each other, huddled around this father and son praying for them. Where do you get that?
Come on.
Where do you get that?
Folks, you're going to love this week. Welcome back to the Wild at Heart podcast. Gosh, it's almost the middle of June now. June 10th we are. And so hope your summer is opening up and beginning to unfold with some good plans. This story, and many like it, is taking place around what we're calling fires.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to tell you about it again. We want to invite you to be a part of it. And we want to tell you some more stories and even show some pictures and some video. So before we jump into all that, we've got Morgan. Buddy, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be with you.
And John in the studio this week. And let's just take our pause, everybody. Wherever you are, you're driving, you're working out, you're walking the dog, take a moment. Let's let everything go. And so we say, Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, catch me. Right now, where I am, catch me. And help me to release it all to you. All people and projects, all of the day and the week, all of the crises and the needs. I give everyone, and I give everything to you, God. And so would you help me just name the things right now that I need to release to you? God, I release it. I release it all in order to come back to you and come back to myself. Would you meet me here in this week's podcast? Amen. Well, buddy, welcome back to the studio.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Feels like a while since you were in here.
We have a lot going on.
People have no idea how much is behind that sentence. We do. What have you been doing? How's the family? You're partial empty nesters.
We are in the process of parenting young adults, moving into full adulthood. It's wild. I think, how am I doing, John? I think what I would say is genuinely, it is well with my soul. I mean, I think that's the truest sort of reality that rises up.
Wow.
It is well. And, where do I locate that? I think as I just look at my initiation the last 9 months, I feel like I've really been immersed in a season of deep relationship with God, of deepening communion. I've done less content in the last 9 months, as far as like absorbing content, podcasts. And, I'm a voracious learner.
That's rare.
Right. I mean, I love learning. I love reading. And I've been reading a few books very slowly.
Wow.
And, I'm in the scriptures every day, much less slowly. And I found just a new degree shift of slowing down and really practicing meditation really for the first time, of deep breathing work. You and I have talked about breath work and how central it is to our life in God. So I would say in the last 9 months, it's been this cultivating deeper friendship with God, deeper union, and the world's crazy.
Yeah.
I spent, rather close to Easter, I spent Holy Week in Disneyland. It's just such a parable.
Wow.
Right? And there's a whole story behind it, but spring break, fighting for my daughter to get away from school, get a tan, look at some colleges, capture a little bit of childhood before it's gone. And I'm in Disneyland for Holy Week. That is not my first choice.
No.
And yet it feels a little bit like where my soul is in the world, right? The world is crazy.
Yes.
It's getting faster.
Yes.
And yet there's a place of abiding.
Yeah.
A place of remaining the branch and the vine. And I think I'm finding that it's available right here, that the process is the purpose. So all that's to say.
What's with the new pace?
Well, I think it came out of some Sabbath time last summer.
Okay.
And really, shallows, midlands, depths. There's a guy that wrote this book about that. And I went into the depths for several days in a row and just came out of that with a real direction from the heart of God of just invitations like, I want you to fill the reservoir and I want you to practice holding something back. And for most people, it's to engage. But for my temperament and brokenness, it's actually holding back requires more faith and trust in God.
Yeah.
And so that began sort of a process. In the last 9 months, I've been intentional with the spiritual director monthly.
You have? Wow.
Yeah, for 9 months now. So just to have that cadence of a daily practice of slowing down, of, lighting a candle, doing breath work, coming into God in the present moment before diving into scriptures or even prayer.
Yes.
And so just practicing.
Yes.
I want more of God. I need more of God in this hour.
Yeah.
Or else I won't make it. Like you said to our team multiple times, thrive or die.
Yeah.
That phrase has been so helpful, John.
Yes.
Thrive or die.
It's a thrive or die moment.
I choose thrive.
Yes.
And it's messy and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yes.
But having sort of direction from God this summer, I came into the new year and the advanced words were stay the course. I mean, we are in a season and the new year doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
I'm immersed in something deep. So small shifts right in my dailies, but it's been super fruitful.
Wow.
And I think, circumstances haven't changed, but the internal landscape has changed. So it's really good.
Well, your circumstances are getting, I don't want to call it more difficult, but you've already got one son out of the house.
Yeah, more complex.
Daughter headed to college.
Yep.
In a year.
Yep.
And so there's change.
Right.
Sherry in grad school, all the things going on. And yet you're describing a life that I'm well.
Yeah.
I hope that's really intriguing to people.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. So same with you. Busy spring. Lots going on. We were in Australia. We had events here. In the midst of that, parenting adult children and grandparenting. These precious little hearts. I was at a ballet class last night for little 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. Oh gosh. It just slayed me. It was beautiful. What have you guys been doing on the BGS podcast? The Become Good Soil podcast.
Well, Sherry and I just finished a series called The Meta Narrative of Feminine Love. And I would say it just really encapsulates the heart of the BGS podcast. It's to dive deep. It's kind of for the hearts, men and the women they're championing that really want to be apprenticed by God and to immerse ourselves as deep as possible in the kingdom of God.
Yep.
It's for those that want as much as they're willing to receive. And so we dive deep. And so this series is just a great example that it explores this idea of what does wholehearted masculinity look like as it's integrated with wholehearted femininity. Yes, of course, in marriage, but what about the community, the body? That verse, I was caught by it this Lent. In the gospel, it says that the women tended to Jesus's needs. That actually Jesus had needs, and there were particular women that traveled with him to take care of his needs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so mind-blowing to just pause and enter into that space. And that idea of this coming together of two unique realities becoming one, and the restoration of all things expressed in full and total restored masculinity, integrating with full and total restored femininity. So it's just an example.
Yeah, you guys have been doing deep work in that.
Yeah. And so we're going into the meta-narrative of masculine love after that with a great story of an alumni that's traveled in all of this in between those two named Ryan. So I think, it's just a fun space to say, if you want to go the deep end and you want to find those questions that really entice and disrupt and lead us deeper, we got a pretty deep well.
Yeah. So if that's new to you and you didn't know about the Become Good Soil podcast, it's the deeper track here at Wild at Heart for all our friends around the world to go, oh, okay, I want more of this. And Morgan leads that and discipleship, spiritual formation here at the ministry. So cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now we are going to talk about what we were supposed to talk about, which was fires. We told the story at the beginning of the podcast, that beautiful father-son reconciliation moment that took place around a gathering, around a fire. So last year, we launched, last summer, we launched a program called Wild at Heart Fires. Let's tell a little bit of that story and what's happening since, because this thing has gone global.
Wildfire.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, I think to invite our listeners in, if it's fresh, it's a movement that found us. I mean,
there you go.
Right? We talk about having a tiger by the tail a lot. This is a movement, I want to say in all humility of God, that we're tapping into, that we are getting to steward some of it, but it's really a global fellowship of like-hearted allies that are championing this gospel in their community. And the distinction of the fires is it's very specific. It's a masculine, authentic space that's story-centered. And when you think about a fire and men gathering around fires, that's an ancient practice, right? And it's a place to put down the guard. It's a place to drop the religious sort of language and culture that's just so sticky. It's a place where all men are welcome. There are so many people who don't profess faith in Christ who are coming to so many of these fires. So in that reality, it's very evangelistic. But when I say that, I don't mean in the religious sense. I mean, it is wide open to men that are thirsty.
Yeah.
And really how it started was we've basically said to people since the birth of the mission of Wild at Heart is walk with God. Go and walk with God. You can do this. Take this into your community. And so a handful of men started gathering around fires, and they did it for years. And they started reporting back to us like what God was doing. Yeah. And so I felt the Spirit of God say, get them and grab their stories and let the world see you can do this. We were with Brian from Wild Courage and Jay from Being Sons. And in the middle of the podcast, there was a sense from the Spirit of this is supposed to go really far and really wide. And we have a role in stewarding it. We have a lot of leverage out there. And so I came to you and said, I think This is supposed to have some sort of formal shape to it,
Yep.
not to control, but to actually champion those men around the globe. And so we gathered from them all the intel, what works, what doesn't work, what are the bare bones, what are the non-negotiables to create an environment for men to encounter God indirectly through sharing story.
Yes.
A question or two to just provoke those deep desires in the heart of a man, always flame, always outside.
Yes.
And so we did a 2-part series and we dreamed, the audacious dream was 300 fires, like as in 300 different outposts around the globe.
Yes, by the end
by the end of a year. So
2023.
Exactly.
Yep.
By the end of 2023. So we put it on Become Good Soil in June, and then we did another announcement of it in Wild at Heart in September, and we thought 300 fires. In like 90 days, we had over 400 fires. And when I say a fire, I mean a man offering a fire on a regular basis is one fire.
A circle.
A circle.
Yeah.
And John, what it did was it tapped into this like latent desire of men are isolated.
Yes.
And they don't have a safe place to just show up. Drag yourself in. All you have to do is come.
Yep.
And you don't have to say a thing. You don't have to prepare. Nothing's required. It's by invitation. And so month after month, nation after nation, yesterday we pulled numbers and we have 777.
What?
777.
What?
Local, regular gatherings. We're in 31 countries and 48 states. I mean, just think about that. It's utterly organic. They sign up on the site and they get dropped, a Firestarter kit. And it has a lighter, really cool custom lighter, and 5 copies of Wild at Heart, 5 copies of Becoming a King, and this really simple postcard guidelines that give really specific structure to care for souls. That's it. And then it's let it loose. I mean, you think about that. 31 nations.
Okay. I have to tell a funny story on this, but for a moment, let me pause and say, and women are starting fires as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're a little behind that curve.
Yep.
And we're preparing, we're going to get there.
Definitely.
We need kits. We need, a different way of doing it.
Totally.
But it's happening.
Yep. Yeah. And we're championing them as we can. But it caught us off guard.
Yes.
Because it was anointed for men and we wanted to steward what was already happening.
Yes.
But we're hearing women and we want to support them.
Yeah. Okay. So we blessed that and that's coming.
Yep.
They're happening right now, but we're going to try and get a kit together and that kind of thing for gals that want to do fires and couples who want to do fires. It's a way of gathering, right? But the authentic masculine space has been lost in so much culture. And so guys are coming to these things.
Yeah.
What I'm cracking up about is, do you remember the prophecy by Jean Darnell, the American missionary to the UK back in the 60s?
No.
Okay, so she had a series of visions. First, it was over the UK of fires. It was like, she was like in an airplane, like 30,000 feet, looking down. There was some sort of blanket of fog, which felt spiritual over the land. And then she started seeing these pinpricks of fires. And then she saw some of those fires like explode, like get really big. And then she saw it jump the channel and spread across Europe. She had it like 3 times, I think. Really felt it was revival of some kind, outbreak of a move of God. And then what was wild is I had the exact same dream the night before someone shared that prophecy with me. Like I didn't know Jean Darnell. I didn't know anything about that prophecy. We were headed to Europe. And the night before we left to get on our flight, I had that dream. I had the exact same vision. It was, from about 30,000 feet, fog over the land, like not good. Like, the people, what's the prophecy in Isaiah? The world is covered with thick darkness and thick darkness covered the people, right? And then I started to see these fires lit. I'm on the airplane reading some documents that people had sent me, and I read that prophecy.
Oh my
And I'm like,
gosh.
holy cow, I just saw that. Okay. What I'm cracking up is so for several years, we've prayed for it.
Yeah.
Lord, let there be an outbreak.
Yeah.
Let your kingdom grow. Let people come to you. Let the world know, all that. We didn't think it was actual fires.
And you're describing the site for Wild at Heart Fires. We literally have a little flame
Yes.
in 777 locations,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
that's so
It's
beautiful.
cracking me up.
So
and I'm
beautiful.
not saying it is the two things, but here all along we thought it was metaphor.
Yes.
Right? It was a prophetic symbol or an image, and actually it's happening.
Yes. It's so good.
It is.
So good. And I think what I'm struck by is the container is universal, right? There's something that this container is working in different cultures, in different regions of the globe. And then they take on an utterly unique expression. There's so much room for our allies to own the space.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's this real balance. Like we talk about, you're either barbarian or bureaucratic, right? We want impact over control. And so there's a few guidelines that are meant to help. And beyond that, it's walk with God with this thing. And so I think there's a lot of room for God to work. And those are the stories. Like we did this survey after we had about 250 fires to just say, what's it like? What do you need?
Yes.
What do you notice? And there were like themes in it. But one of them, the theme is, I'm always surprised by what God does. With so little program.
These are people giving feedback.
Yeah, these are our fire starters,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
They're out there. And thematically, so many said the atmosphere of so little program, so little content, just a soul space and a few evocative questions. Like, what's your risk? Right? What's the risk that you're needing to take? Or where do you feel like you're acting in courage or courage is needed and you're not yet acting? That's it.
Yeah.
You're off to the races for 2 hours. But what the theme is men are reporting, I am constantly surprised month after month at how God moves, at what God does, of how it's never the same twice. And so I think it's just giving a lot of refreshing room for people to be fueled by the life of God, not just the participants, but the hosts.
Yep. It's so fun to watch God show up.
Oh my gosh.
And if you'll set a table
Yes.
and open the door and invite some people in, God comes.
Totally. And just the practice of setting a table for God to show up. But there's so many parts of sort of lifestyle warfare that we're simply not practiced in. Some of the guys, it was really cool, John, they said, I'm actually learning to listen. I don't have many places where I actually practice listening. And one of the guidelines is don't be quick to offer teaching or response.
Yes.
Honor the man.
Yes.
By listening to his story. And guys are saying, I actually really don't know how to listen to a man for his sake. And in listening, God is speaking to my own heart through his life.
Wow.
The power of story.
Wow. Yeah. If you will not control things, you can see God show up.
Yeah.
Like the Leska, and this doesn't have a whole lot of control around it. I mean, It's got very, very few guidelines. So you have to show some pictures. I want to show some pictures. I want to tell some stories. Those of you on the video podcast, we're actually going to give you a little video as well. So let's put some pictures up.
Yeah, John, I think we ought to start with the video. Brave soul, a longtime disciple, and actually a pastor in Washington. And he hosts his first fire, and it is a torrential downpour.
Oh, no.
And he's just like so brave, right? I mean, as a pastor fighting for the hearts of people, but he was so intrigued by the opportunity to just cast all the stuff off and just get down to the simplicity of life on life. So they set up a camping awning and they have this fire with like 6 or so guys huddled underneath this tent in this pouring rain. And it was just like, and it was their first fire.
Oh my
and,
gosh.
and it was a sort of almost like a stand against the enemy of just this, like, we will take a stand. We are not relinquishing what God wants to do here.
Yes.
And now that was over a year ago.
What?
They've gathered every month since. And he said, it hasn't rained one time since that first night. It's been bitter cold. You know, you have the humidity and they're, so happy for summer.
Yeah.
But it hasn't
It's
rained.
almost like the enemy tried to shut it down.
Exactly. Before it ever started, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting, the stories that have come out of like that hardship, like these guys, Paul in Alaska, longstanding disciple, and he's all in. And he listened to the 2-part series, he said 4 times before he really felt like, I'm just going for it. And these pictures, we'll show some of those from Alaska. I mean, 15 degrees in Alaska. These guys, it looks like the scene from Walter Mitty going, to find Sean.
Yeah.
And it was like, they just had a grin of like, it's defiance.
Yeah.
Right? It's defiance of like, we won't be shut down and we're not going to stay inside. And so it's fascinating. So Paul is a, long-standing, for decades, disciple, apprentice of Wild at Heart. And he said this, he said, I have a company of brothers that I haven't had in decades because you guys opened up space for this. Isn't that interesting? Wow. Like he's wanted it, but it was some shift that happened through this mechanism that he says he has a company of brothers.
Yeah. Okay. I know this isn't quite in the genre that we're looking for, but I heard about an online fire yesterday.
That's new to me.
So these guys are like, well, we can't get together. They're scattered in a country where they can't get together, but they're like, but we need to be together. So I don't know how they're producing the flame part. Maybe one guy's got the video on the fire, but they are gathering online as though they were around a fire because they need to be together, right?
Well, I know guys that have moved indoors, whether they just couldn't pull it off. And the spirit is we want connection and not distraction. Yeah. And they got various propane, arrangements. Yes. And it was enough. You get some ventilation. Yeah. And it was like sufficient, a flame. Yep. I know guys, actually, this one environment, they couldn't have open flame. And they were in a really large shed, but it was the kind of space that they didn't have control over. They got about 50 candles and lit them. Come on. And at first you think like, really? You shut down the lights? You have 50 candles, all different shapes and sizes, and a group, just the intimacy.
I love that.
And it was like, there's always a way. He makes a way where there is no way.
Yes. And dudes are coming to Jesus.
Oh, I think, I don't want to overstate it, but 25 years in this mission, I would say that this is the most evangelistic expression of this gospel. And because there are guys coming that don't walk with God, and there are also guys coming that have walked with God for years. Yeah. And they're shoulder to shoulder. They're all peers. Yes. Right? It's that reciprocity of the kingdom. Everyone is giving and everyone's receiving love. And I mean, we're hearing stories of people coming to Christ left and right in this. Like it's blowing my mind.
Oh, it's just so good. It's so top of funnel. Yeah. Right? It's like, it's the broadest reach.
Totally.
Anybody gets to come. Anybody gets to share their story. They're not going to be taught at.
And we even have a core value of these aren't private. So if you want to do a private fire with your band of brothers, like go for it. But that's not what this is for. Yeah. And that's not on the site.
Okay.
They're always open. And the idea is you know, a lot of these fires are 3 people, 5 people, but if they get up to about, guys sometimes say about 20, the invitation is break off and start another fire. Yeah. And then there's this fluidity of guys coming and going because it is loose and it is open. So the idea is that guy that you meet, you know, next to each other, you're watching your kid's soccer game. You're at the ballet, right? Totally. You're literally at the 6-year-old ballet and you see a guy and you just know, you kind of size him up and you go, man, this guy needs a lifeline. You say, you have a thing to say, hey, I don't know if you've like checked out fires, but I know there's at least 4 going on in Colorado Springs. Like you might check it out. There's a place for him.
Yes.
It's always open.
Yes. That's really, I mean, even just personally, I think about where do I invite my mechanic?
Yes.
Where do I invite my neighbor, really, really smart guy? I don't think the first step is church.
Yeah.
Eventually, you want to get him into a Christian community, but the first step, the Fires, is working out like really fabulously well. So gang, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the original show we did, the 2-part series, telling stories, and the guys who got the whole movement started, they're in that show.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes.
That's great.
We have a website for Fires.
Yep. It's just wildatheart.org/fires.
Okay.
So that's where you go for all of it.
And so people can search for a fire.
Yep.
I want to find one.
Yep. As soon as you get to the site, there's 2 options. One is find one or host one.
Okay.
And so it's really cool. If you start with the find one, it'll show you the world map and
I love
everywhere it's going on. And then you click and it'll give you just the basics of a contact information. You can reach out to that person and they might say, oh yeah, we had to change the location because of something, or we changed the date, or come on in, or we change, this other guy's hosting it now, right?
Yeah.
It's very organic, but there's a way to reach a guy in that world. My nephew is at school at University of Delaware, and I took him on a ski trip, and he's just coming alive, and he's doing, killing lions, and now Wild at Heart with his guys. And I said, hey, have you hooked up for a fire? And because most of the ministry is just peers, right? And they're needing older men.
Yes.
And I said, well, I don't know if there's one in Delaware, but let me check it out. And we get on the phone, and in 30 seconds, we're in Delaware. There's one 15 minutes from his campus.
Come on.
And so find the email and say, give this guy a call.
Yeah.
Right? It's that accessible if you want it. And he went for it.
Yes.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. How many countries?
So 31 countries.
31 countries. And we haven't even set the ladies loose yet.
Right.
I mean, imagine what's going to happen when the gals get on board with this. I mean, there are some forerunners who are posting women's fires right now.
And then the docuseries, I mean, when that goes, we just really think that here's the dream, right? We thought 300 and God just sort of snickered at us. What if there was a fire in driving distance of every person that wanted authentic fellowship?
Yeah.
And that's happening.
Yeah.
And so that site has it.
You mentioned the docuseries. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
So this is central now. And again, this is God's serendipity.
The wildness.
Didn't put these 2 projects together. Okay.
No.
So everybody, this, but I don't think you know the date. In October this year, we're going to finally roll out the Wild at Heart docuseries, which is a 4-part Netflix, chef's table type. I mean, it's gorgeous. These powerful, powerful episodes as a way of reaching men, their wives, their families. Like it's gonna be the kind of thing you feel great handing to someone, right? Saying, sharing a link and go, oh, you got to watch this.
Like your mechanic.
Totally. I can't wait.
Start with this.
Yeah. And then the new idea is, so we had that docuseries cruising along, and then the fires, break out. And now the idea is a guy who watches the docuseries and goes, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
You got my attention. Where do I go for more of this? It's to help him get to a fire.
Totally. Well, just the idea of there's a way to connect relationally.
Yeah.
And it's locally. Yeah. Right. It's like, it starts with relationship. And so we have a world of content, right? And 30 days, right? And in the pause and this podcast, but relationship is what gives that sustainability, that access point. And so on wildatheart.org/fires, you can find one or you can host one. You click host and you just sign up, and we'll put that Firestarter kit in the mail for free. It's all free, right? It is crowdfunded. It's people that have been blessed by this movement that are paying it forward.
Yes.
for you guys to launch a fire.
Yeah.
So you get a kit and there's all sorts of resources and it's ongoing. It's really fun. We're developing an FAQ. We're doing regular support for our fire leaders out there. So we hosted a first Zoom call and it was a great Q&A. It was a time of prayer. And we're actually going to have that Zoom recording online as a resource by the time this podcast airs.
Right on. Great.
So the idea is it's constantly evolving. You can always find more resources. And then one other thing to mention, John, that's really powerful, isolation is just taking so many people out. We're surrounded by people and yet we're alone. We're using the tool Slack to connect people in this message. So we have a Wild at Heart Slack community, as you know, that connects men leading basics and now fire leaders. And so it has all sorts of channels. And if you've not been in it, it's real time. So I open it up every morning. I just got a report from Micah down in the panhandle of Florida, and they hosted their, I think, like 7th fire last night. He told a story of God coming. And I mean, I wake up to that every morning of some amazing story or a prayer request. We're going into our first fire in 3 hours.
Yes.
Because of you guys, like I'm risking, would you pray for me?
Yes.
And it's an active community, like real time. And so all of a sudden, 777 outposts gets really small. You can pray for 1 or 2 other fires. You can get prayer for others. You can post your picture. A guy, one story that was beautiful. He took a risk and he had 3 guys and it was good, but it was still like, man, do I keep doing this? And then the second time he did it, no one showed up. He said he had the most exquisite night with God at the fire.
By himself. Wow.
And then he went on to continue month after month and hosted it.
Yeah.
His most powerful fire was when no one showed up.
Wow.
And so the idea is there's a community to stand with you, to cheer you on, to ask a question, to resource each other. And it's just getting started.
Yeah. Oh, far out. So if you want to help with the idea that the docuseries is going to roll out in October, and as it rolls out in succession, we hope it's going to reach 1 million new men and their families. Where do those guys go? Be really cool if there were a lot more fires posted on that site.
Yeah.
So wildatheart.org/fires, we'll put that in the show notes. And then you can either look for one or you can host one. And if they host one, they get an invitation into that Slack community. Is that what you're saying?
So you can jump into that Slack community right away.
Okay.
The link will be in the show notes and you can find the link on that site. So you can jump in. You can just jump in and check it out. Just be encouraged to hear the stories.
Awesome. That's killer. I'm going to put a few more of these pictures up real quick because you need to just see these of guys, suburban neighborhoods and wilderness sites. And who are all these dudes? This is one with like 25 guys around it. Oh, it's just so, so beautiful.
Yeah, one of the pictures is, they ended up praying for a guy and just laying hands on this man. And he had never been prayed for by a group of men.
In his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just beautiful. So come, God, come and fill this. We want to partner with you. We really do. And for all of us listening, Papa, if you are moving me to start a fire, I'm in. Show me who, show me where, show me how. Yeah, so joyful. So joyful. Here all along, we thought that vision of fire springing up was metaphorical. And it may still be, but it is a hoot that it's happening.
Yeah.
And you get on the actual page, you're going to enjoy it because you can, it's global.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. And you get to see all these fire icons on the map. And it's just so encouraging. You're like, wow, God is working.
Yes, it works.